So I really, really admire the way you speak with your boys. They are really inquisitive. I remember my younger brother being like that, but your response is kind of different. You answer their questions plainly, correctly, and bluntly, and you don't laugh at them. That's something I noticed. You take their questions as serious and important. What kind of influenced that? What influenced you to speak like that to them? Is it something you decided to do?
For me, I think when you're talking to children, children instinctively are very inquisitive, and they're discovering the world, and they have a lot of questions to ask. And as a parent, you have a lot of information that would inform them of what to do and what to think. And it helps if, when they answer a question, listen, take it seriously, because there's a reason they're asking the question. I think one thing you want to move away from is when a child asks a question, infantilizing them and thinking, oh, you will never understand, let me talk to you like you're a child. It depends, of course, on the age. But they're absorbing so much in the world, and they're discovering a lot. And part of your role as a parent is to share that journey with them, and explain things to them in a way that that they will understand, and spark them to be even more curious and to ask more questions, to learn a lot more.
And when it comes to the hard questions, how do you handle that? Like, if you're asked a question about, maybe sex or sexual issues, how do you respond to that?
I think for me, it depends on the age of a child. As a parent, you know your children,
Right.
and the way they think and their level of understanding. For primary school children or for secondary school children, it will be very different, because the information they're learning at school is also extremely different. For a secondary school child, from the age of about 11, 12, at that age, they should be learning about the biology of the body. And boys and girls, they will be learning things about their own body. They will notice that their own body is changing. For boys, their voice is getting deeper. For girls, their breasts or their body is getting wider. And they'll be curious why that is. So in class, they'll be learning about the biology of the body. So it's obvious, it makes perfect sense that they will probably have, and if they don't, they should, have a lesson about sex, how babies are made. And so when they learn that information, they've got the facts. But then now they may be still a bit curious about how the body works, how babies are produced. And because they know the facts, as a parent, when they come and tell you, the one thing you do not want to do is infantilize them and pretend like they don't know what they're talking about. Because with the age of the internet, if you don't tell them, they'll find out that information themselves. With primary school children, it's a bit trickier, because they may not have learned about their bodies, and their bodies are not changing. So it may be a bit harder to explain the biology of how a baby is made. But one thing you want to steer clear of is, again, not answering the questions directly. Fine, at that age you may not get into the direct mechanics of how a baby is made, but you do explain to them that when a man and a woman comes together in a loving relationship, usually, then they may decide to have a child, and in that way they have a better understanding of maybe how a baby is made. I mean, it depends on the age of a child. Some primary school kids may be more advanced, but because they're not really learning about the biology of the body in that detail at school, you want to explain to them in simple terms, and maybe not go into the detail just yet until you're sure that they can understand.
So, the other day I was talking to you about the gaps that existed in my secondary school sex education program. So many people don't know, many young children are not given the full comprehensive sex education that they need. So what kinds of issues around sex education should parents be giving to their children?
Okay, well, for boys and girls, it's going to, of course, differ, because the biologies of their body is very different. So for a girl, you would talk to her about puberty. Her body is going to change. One day she'll have her period. The one thing you want to avoid is your daughter starting her period and having no idea what it is and why it's happening. Because that can be quite frightening, because her friends at school may probably be experiencing a similar thing. And, and they will be talking to one another. And what you want is your child to have the right information, because if you don't tell them, they're learning about it somewhere else. So I think for girls, you want to explain to them definitely about the biology of how their bodies are changing. And then for boys, similarly, they're going through puberty. They are growing facial hairs, their voice is getting deeper. And you want to, again, explain to them the biology of how their body is changing. However, at the same time, one thing you do want to explain to both boys and girls, especially girls, and boys often, is they have to know the boundaries in terms of when a person comes to them. And the reason I raise this is we have a lot of sexual violence in Nigeria and sexual abuse. And as parents, you want to be in a position to tell your kids the safeguards. So when somebody comes to you, an older person comes to you asking you for certain things, you have to know what is right and what is wrong. And I think in this day and age, as parents, we have to be bold and we have to have those crucial conversations with our children. It may be uncomfortable, but the flip side of not having them is you don't ever want to find out that something happened to your child and they're not in a position to talk to you, because that can have a significant effect on a child for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. You know, but there are consequences to being bold, like you said, or some uncomfortable reactions that you'll get. For example, our children interact with other children, and their children interact with parents, and then they get certain information. And then how do you react to parents and caregivers who feel that by being open and bold with your child, you're giving their own children information that they don't want them to have, or they're not ready for them to have, when you're just trying to protect your child?
I think for parents who are resistant to talking to their kids about their bodies or talking about sex, the reality you will face is they're going to find out. And in a way, you as a parent know what your family values are, you know what your family beliefs are. And in the age of the internet, if you do not tell your child, they will find out themselves. All it takes is a quick Google search. And what you want to do is be the person that informs them about certain things, about sexual education, about their body. So that, you know, in the future, one thing you always want to do is have this open dialogue with your kids, that they can talk to you about anything. And in a way, if the child asks you a question and you don't answer them honestly, and they go and find that information online, then they will know that, you know, mom and dad, I can't really talk to you about these kinds of things. And they may go elsewhere. And they will be definitely talking to their friends about it. You know, we all did as children. You do. And there are many myths that you hear, and you're shocked how do teenagers still believe this? And you find out it's because nobody has ever sat down and spoken to them. And you know, you have to, as a parent, take that responsibility on your shoulder, because in this changing world, if anybody is to inform your kids and guide them, it's you as a parent. It is your ultimate responsibility. And you hope that other parents will do the same, so that whatever your children hear is factual and it's not based on myth or superstition or otherwise. So ultimately, I'd say to parents, you have to be as open as you can and honest with your kids. Because by not doing so, you are isolating yourself from your child. And the one thing you do not want to do is wake up one day and think you know your child, but have no clue what's going on in their lives.